Good morning. Good morning. It is Rashida, Sheeta D of Sheeta's on the Loose, live with you here with a special guest. You know, I love guests. Thank you for waiting. We're a little bit delayed this morning because, of course, I had technical issues, but we're here. We're doing it. And Nicole is here. So, if you don't know, I'm here with Nicole Stroud, who is the Soulful Expat, who's coming to us all the way from China, from Shanghai, China. So, Nicole, what time of the day is it there?
It is 10:06 p.m. on a Sunday.
Okay, so we can't keep Nicole too late because you got to work in the morning.
I mean, it's camp. I'll be all right.
All
I
right,
like
all right.
treating
It's camp.
people.
Okay,
I'm
you'll be all right.
flexible
So
tonight.
we'll keep you around for a little bit. Okay, okay.
All
All
right, all
right.
right. I'm trying to move, trying to be cute.
No, no more. Listen, you saw how I was getting through this morning of issues. Okay, if you're watching the replay, let us know that you're watching the replay. If you have comments, questions while you're here on the live, go ahead and drop them. Nicole wants to tell you the scoop about living in China, which I'm really interested to hear from her perspective. I've heard about it from a lot of different people, but I don't frequently talk to people who live in the major cities in China, and she's in Shanghai, which if I had to say I had a favorite city in China, it would be Shanghai, but I don't really love China that much. But if I had a favorite, and we're not counting Hong Kong, right? If we're not counting Hong Kong, and I had to pick a favorite in China, it would be Shanghai. But also, if I never went back, I'd probably be okay. So we want to hear from you because you like your life there, right?
I do. I mean, this
Yeah.
is my, yeah, I mean, it's my seventh year abroad. I am from New York. So I
Wow.
think making an adjustment to another major city, I think that really helps. It is a really quite an international city. I think most of the things that we all use at home is here. Like, we have a Walmart-ish. We have Costco, regular things that we use. Of course, it is still China. So most things are in Chinese or Mandarin, however you want to use that word. But yeah, generally speaking, my day to day, I take the metro, just like I would if I was in New York. And yeah, I really like it. There's a lot to do here. And I like Shanghai. I really do. I actually am surprised that I like it as much as I did because I didn't think that I would. Because very much like what you said, I know you said you heard a lot about China before. I also did, and I was quite apprehensive. But I said I wanted to be open, and here I am. This is my second year here in China.
Okay. So do you mind sharing? Will there be a third year? Is it unknown?
So it's funny because I really do love Shanghai, right? And this is gonna sound crazy. I love
Mhm.
Shanghai, but actually because I've been following Sheeta Z, the one who's over here interviewing me, I actually am planning on taking a career break. So I will be leaving Shanghai at the end of September to do a little bit more exploring. But
Okay.
it's not because of like not liking China. To be quite honest with you, visas here are quite complex, and especially with the COVID situation. Even though I did apply for a business visa, the whole visa process here is not as easy as other places where you could kind of just hang out. So I just thought it was probably best for me to like kind of take a break. And then if I want to revisit Shanghai, then I would definitely do that because there are a lot of entrepreneurial opportunities here. Definitely if you
Okay.
are business minded, I mean, just so many ways to like make things happen here. Like you could like have a conversation with someone about an idea and someone's like, all right, let's do it. Like I have a place, let's do it. And if you're
Okay.
in that energy, it just feels good. It's not like people don't just talk stuff, like they make it happen here. So that is definitely one of the turn ons that I have about being in Shanghai.
Okay. So I just saw Adelia in the comments, and she used to
Hi,
live in China,
Adelia.
but in a small city. Oh, and Wiley says, I just spoke with Nicole on Clubhouse. So glad I was reminded to tune in this morning. Yay. Thanks for being here, Wiley. Um, if anyone else here has lived in China, drop it in the comments. Let us know. Let us know what town/city you lived in so we have some frame of reference. Because I know China is, I don't know if I want to call it a popular spot for expats, but people do quite frequently end up there.
It's interesting because like Yeah, most people live outside in smaller provinces, to be quite honest. Um, I don't really meet that many people that say they went to Shanghai. Most times, even when I meet people in Shanghai, they started off in a smaller province. And probably because the thing with China, I mean, a lot of the laws are changing right now, but you could essentially have a bachelor's degree and you can just get a TEFL license and you can just basically teach English here. So I think most people are attracted to coming here as a great starting point to getting into teaching abroad. Like if you've never been let's say a trained teacher, or maybe that's not your background, it is a great way to come in here and start that way. So most people do start up in smaller cities, maybe working at a training center, working at Disney English when that was a thing. So that was how many people come to China. Whereas in like other places, like I lived in the UAE prior to this, you had to have a teaching license to work there. So I think most people are mostly happy to just start that journey. So they're often willing to take, and not to say shaded at any way, there are definitely international schools in other smaller provinces, but from people that I personally meet, oftentimes they start at like a training center or start at a smaller school, and then they make their way to Shanghai.
Okay. So I know that and I want to get back to you live in the UAE, so we have some comparisons. But right now we're just gonna talk about comparisons to New York City, right? That's where you're from. And there's some Jamaican in there too.
Yes,
Right.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Did you ever live there, or your parents from there, from Jamaica?
Yes, my parents from there. Yeah, I mean, as a child, I would go like twice a year. My family has a house there. Like, I'm trying to go for my birthday still, trying to manifest that.
Okay.
And yeah, I'm very much connected to my Jamaican roots. I mean, anybody that knows me know. I mean, I legit, if I legit like have a flag. Like it's real deal. I'm very Jamaican and very New York. People meet me right away. They know that that's something that I'm going to bring to the
You're a
table.
Jamaican New Yorker.
Yes,
Okay, so
yes.
my mother is Jamaican. My dad's from Antigua. My mom's from Jamaica, and I do not have
Oh,
a flag
see,
on my desk. So she's probably going to yell at me after this. Like,
you
why don't
need a
you have a
flag.
flag?
You need a flag,
Because
sis.
like
Oh, come on,
West
get the
Indians, we
flag.
love our flags, right? Like we love to have a flag close by. So I do not have one. I gotta fix
We need
that.
to get you a flag. We need to get you a flag.
Yes, yes, yes. See our mom right there in the comments. Wave that flag, girl.
Yeah,
Exactly.
see, I love mama,
Yeah.
right? We gotta rep. We gotta rep wherever we go. We gotta rep.
Yes. All right. Oh, Teresa's watching. Teresa, I heard it was your birthday. Happy birthday. Okay, so Teresa Meza in the comments is a Jamaican chef here in Mexico. She cooks weekly and you can order her food, pick it up, or go get it delivered. I've had her oxtail. I've had Jamaican oxtail in Mexico City. Like,
That's amazing.
that's
Amazing.
amazing. Amazing. So if you're in Mexico City and you want Jamaican food, Teresa Meza is your go-to person.
Oh,
If
that's
you're not
good.
here and you're coming down, Teresa. All right.
All
Happy
right.
birthday, Teresa. All right. Let's see. Oh, lots of Jamaicans representing today.
Yay! I didn't even
Okay.
do this. I didn't do this, but you
Listen,
know.
when you wave the flag, we come all the way out. All right, back on topic. Back on topic. Because
Okay,
you know I
back
get a
on.
little scattered, get all over the place. You didn't come to Shanghai to start your teaching career. So what brought you there? Why did you choose Shanghai?
So I was living in the UAE for 5 years, and I came to the point when I was ready to leave. And I know that I also wasn't ready to go back home to New York. I wasn't, and I really enjoyed my international experience. And I had actually spoken to a recruiter, and she actually suggested Shanghai. China was not even on my list. I wasn't even thinking about it. And I was pretty hesitant, if I were to be really honest. And I said, are there Black people there? Like, what are their experiences like? Because she pretty much knew I was from New York City. So that was like her kind of way of trying to get me to be intrigued by Shanghai specifically. And she connected me actually with another Black woman. And we sent a couple of emails, and I just trusted this lady. I never met her. I don't even know what she looks like. Like, legit, we just sent a couple of emails. And I was like, okay, this doesn't sound bad. And I think because I was already abroad, I said to myself, you know what, let me go, let me check it out. And the worst case, I leave. Like, if I don't like it, I don't have to stay here. I can complete my contract. If I have to break my contract if needed, and I would leave. And I came here, and of course, I started right before the pandemic. So that was also kind of awkward, right? Because I started in September, and then next thing you know, after Chinese New Year, I was pretty much stuck here. But once I got acclimated after a couple of months, I was like, okay, it's not that bad. You know, it's a little gritty, you know, if I was to compare it to the UAE, a little gritty. But I think just like using the tools that I have from being in the UAE and like what are the things that are most important to me? How do I find that? How do I make that work? And then I started to like essentially find a groove here. And it took time, you know, just communicating with people at work, because those are definitely the first people that I started speaking to more often. And yeah, and then that's essentially what I did. And then I was like, okay, there's a lot of things to do. There's a bunch of restaurants, there's a bunch of museums here. And that's how I just like slowly just found a groove. Like, how do I buy things? How do I order things? And I was like, okay, it's not that bad. I mean, of course, you know, being Black, I mean, of course, I have to say this. Even living in Shanghai, you do get stares. Sometimes, you know, people take out their cameras and they want to take a photo of you. And depending on if I'm feeling peace and love, you know, sometimes I do peace and love, and you know, and in other moments I get Bronx, Jamaican, and I remind them that this is not what we're going to do today. This is not the zoo. We are not in a you know, like, so. That's also very real. Sometimes they try to like pick up the phone and try to act like they're like, they try to be so sly with it, you know, and we kind of, you know, I politely let them know this is not what we're doing.
Not today.
Not today. We're not doing that. So for me, I'm like, to have that in a major city, I could only imagine what it's like in other smaller, like, you know, but generally speaking, outside of that, you know, there's a lot of things here, like restaurants and going out to bars, museums. They're always like building something. So there's definitely a lot of things to keep you busy. Sometimes I'm overwhelmed by the amount of things to do. You know, like I'm just like, hold up, like I'm not a young thing anymore. Like I can't be in these streets all the time. So
okay.
let me pick and choose. But yeah, there's a lot of things to do here for sure.
When we're talking about things to do, I have to ask, because it's the season we're in. How is like, what's the experience like with COVID right now? Like, I know before it was not great, but right now, what's it like?
Yeah, you know, it's crazy because I always say I feel like I live in like a parallel universe, because when COVID first happened, everything was shut down. You know what I mean? It was just shut down. Like there was nothing to do outside except jog or walk. Now, because of the, you know, the measures that they have here, you know, if you're walking into a government building, metro, those type of things, you have to wear a mask. We do have a QR code on our phone that we have to show. Certain buildings will require it, so they'll know whether or not we've left Shanghai or not. If someone's entering China, it's a 3-week mandatory quarantine, 2-week at a government hospital, which I hear is trash. I mean, not hospital, excuse me, hotel, and 1 week at home. So because of these extreme measures, that's why like people probably see me on my stories. And even my mom, she always gets on me. I don't see you with a mask on. I'm like, Mom, it's totally different here. Like I can't. It's like hard to explain because of people are not outside like worried. Even though some people, some locals, they act up sometimes when you walk in the store and they want to put on their mask. And then of course that's when I hit them with the peace and love. Like, really, you putting on your mask? Like I'm over here defending you in these streets. Like what? You putting on your mask? Like, but generally speaking, like it feels like a regular day. Like you can go out to functions. Everyone pretty much is carrying on with their daily lives because most people have not left China. Like there's no one you're really going to interact with that really left since COVID. I mean, maybe for like special cases for their job, but they probably went through an extreme quarantine before they can even come out in public. So as a result, that's why it just seems like business as usual. Like everything is open. Yeah.
Okay, and the cases are low. The COVID cases are.
Yeah, and the thing is that it's China too. So sometimes, I mean, yeah, they'll say like there's a case and then things just get shut down. They'll say 1 case or 2 cases, but you know where I live, so sometimes you just have to trust like that. That's what's actually the the situation. You know, when anything is shut down, you just have a clue that something must have happened.
Okay.
Like I was, yeah.
Are they encouraging people to get vaccines over there?
You know what? At my school, they ask people to volunteer, but there's not this special, like, at least for me, I'm only speaking at my school. There
Mhm.
isn't this like force, like you must get it. It's like, oh, it'd be
Okay.
nice if you did. It's like volunteer if
Okay.
you like. Yeah, it's not like
All
in the
right.
U.S.
All right. But of course, the experience on the ground is a lot different, and so I know that that impacts whether people are pushing vaccines or not. But that's really interesting. One of the things you said before about people putting on masks when you walk in as an obvious foreigner. I was talking to Adelia this week about some of the challenges in being an expat. And if you're a Black expat, depending on where you go, one of the challenges for me is that I will always be an outsider in Mexico. Yes, there are dark skinned people in Mexico, there are darker people, there are Black people who are from Mexico. Um, but it's rare to see them in Mexico City. So for here, like I will, no matter how much Spanish I speak, no matter how much I dress like a local, I will always be an outsider. And I think it's interesting. I'd like to talk to you about that experience because I assume it's the same in China. Like, no matter how good your Mandarin is, like you will always be an outsider. You can never transition from outsider to insider, truly, especially with people who don't, with strangers. And so I want to ask you how you've maneuvered that for 2 years in China and your 5 years in the UAE.
You know what? I think for me, like, yeah, definitely, especially in China, like, you really, I mean, you're Black. I mean, and my head is shaved. Like, I have all these things that make people look at me all the time. Um, so for me, I've just kind of learned how to accept that. Like, I don't live in denial that, like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
Black and I have my shaved head. And like sometimes those two things in itself are very shocking, like children, parents, they all look at me. I think sometimes I can sense, and just because I'm such into energy, like sometimes I can sense and it feels like a natural curiosity and wonder. And I don't think it's always come. Sometimes it's not really a
Mm-hmm.
malicious place. And
Yep.
sometimes I can feel that, when I do, like I like genuinely like smile. And then if I get a smile back, then I feel like it confirms it that it's not
Mm-hmm.
like these. But when it's more like the looking at me like something is wrong, then that feeling of like standing out. And I think it's just one of the things I walk around and accept, like because I don't look like them. The only time when I somewhat feel like, or I don't think about it as much is when I'm with like my Chinese friends, or if I'm
Okay.
hanging out with someone that's not Black. Because one of the things that I do like about China, I do like that we all call foreigners, like whether you're white, Black, African, everyone is just a foreigner. Whereas, let's say when I was in the UAE, it was more like your passport. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that they don't like care about your passport, but we're all Loai, which is the Chinese word for foreigner, right? So when I'm with them, I almost sometimes I can see that we're all kind of getting that treatment as a foreigner. So then it doesn't feel like this very specialized thing to me.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes, yeah, I think that that's kind of how I gauge it, depending on like who I'm with. But I definitely feel like when I'm with Chinese friends or Chinese friends who also speak Mandarin, because I also have Chinese American friends, that sometimes I don't think about it as much.
Okay.
So I think that helps.
That is helpful. I know when I talk to people who are planning, or I see people in like Facebook groups who are planning on moving overseas. I see often I see interpretations of the experience that I haven't seen reflected in real life. Like when I move abroad, I don't want to be around any expats. And I'm like, but that's an experience you can choose to have, right? Like you can choose to move abroad and not be around any expats. You're losing the
Yeah.
soft landing because most times when you can be around other expats or at least communicate with them, like they help make your experience a little bit easier because they know what you need to do as
Yeah,
someone who's a foreigner in the country.
for
But
sure.
also, like, if I move to Colombia and I'm only around Colombians, that does not make me Colombian, right? Like you know what I mean? Like what
Right,
is,
right.
and so I'm often curious about people's intention when they say things like that. Like when I'm moving, I want to move into a local neighborhood. Okay. And like only deal with local people. Okay. But like you're cutting out, you're in effect. And I know there are different reasons for this. I'm just curious about them, but I feel like people are sort of denying themselves. Like, you are a foreigner. Nothing you do is going to make you less of a foreigner if you have a relationship with someone, right? They're going to get to know you in a relationship. But to strangers, you're always going to be a foreigner. So distancing yourself from other foreigners probably isn't doing what you think it's going to do. Like, I don't know what that is. And so I find I'm really curious about people's experiences when they move abroad and the mindset they come into when they're thinking about leaving the US and moving to another country and the experience that they want. Another person I spoke to said they didn't want to move to a country that had any American brands because they didn't want to feel like they were in America. And it's like, girl, where are you going to go? Where? There's a Costco here. There's a Costco there. Like, where are you going to go? If right? Like, if it doesn't have a Starbucks, it probably doesn't have consistent Wi-Fi or electricity. Like, really? Like, what do you
I'm very good on mindset. Like, so for me, I'm queen at asking people questions. Because to me, when someone says that, you're just saying that you want to connect, you want to have like, experiences with locals, and you can have both. Like, I always say I live in like this gray space. I do think, like, to your point, it is important to connect with people who look like you. I think it's important to even connect with people that come from the same state like you. I think it's important to connect with expats and both. Like, I don't think it always has to be an extreme. Like, I'm not going to be with this person. Like, you are already in another country. Like, you are like, come on now, we're not at home. Like, you need to definitely be in both places. I think it's really important. And I do find that when people say it, they say it from a place of like, almost like elitism, kind of like, I don't want to deal with you anymore. Like I've gone on to bigger and better things, or just kind of like, and I'm just like, nah, sis, like, no, you equally need both. Cause that's how you grow, right? You need to have your friends, like, especially as a Black woman, for example, you might need to be in Black groups, especially if you're talking about your hair, or you're talking about even just what's going on in the US. Sometimes talking about things that's going on in the US, you need to be talking to your people. You're not going to want to talk to a local about that, right? But maybe you want to have a local friend if you want to know where you're going to go so that you get the best deal in a place, right? So you're not ripped off. Or in a space like here, if you don't speak Mandarin and you want to make sure that someone can translate, even though we have an app that translates things, but maybe you want someone that can explain something. I think there's a benefit in both. I would never say go all in to any of those extremes, like you need community in both aspects. Like, and also you need community. And I'm very big on the self-discovery part, because when you go abroad, like, as for me, my biggest thing, like, I tell people I paid off like $40,000 in debt, but I feel like that's not even my highlight. My highlight has been my growth, like who I became as a person, and just like exploring. You can actually discover and do so many things when you're abroad and find like what your strengths are, what things you're interested in. And that's also another opportunity to meet people that you may or may not look like you, right? And so I think that you can't just like say you don't want to, like, I know people are going to shame me for this, but I'm going to say it. Like, people like, I'm not going to go to another country and have McDonald's and KFC. I'm like, guess what? Listen, I am Popeye's queen. When I lived in the UAE, listen, Popeyes tastes way better outside of America. And even me being from Jamaica, if I have my Jamaican people here, we can attest to KFC in Jamaica is a whole nother KFC. So listen, definitely, if I'm traveling, I am definitely going to try KFC, McDonald's. That doesn't mean like, I just don't see the point. Like, of course, I had everyone, including my mom, when she visited me in the UAE, she was tasting Popeyes. I was like, Mom, you need to taste the chicken. Like, like, it doesn't have.
It doesn't have to be one or the other. And I think that a lot of times people are closing themselves off from the experiences, right? Because like, no one understands your expat experience in a country like another expat who's from your own country, right? Like Adelia understands me probably better than a lot of other people right now, because she's here in the same city I'm in. We come from the same country. We're both Black women. I can, no matter how many Mexican friends I make, they won't understand. Like you said, if you want to talk about home, they're never going to understand it the way Adelia does because they've never been through it. And it's nice to have someone that you can have a shorthand language with. Like it's really nice to make expat friends, not to rely on them solely, but to have people who understand your experiences.
You have to. You will not. I mean, you will not be able to survive this. Adrienne is in my chats. I met her in China. She's not even in China anymore. We've gained closer friendships just because we get each other. Like, you know, she's teaching right now. I mean, excuse me, not teaching. Sorry. I mean, she's an assistant principal. Let me correct myself.
Right.
You know, let me make sure I say this right. But like, you need them, because even my best friend in the States, there's certain things she just probably would not be able to get unless I do like a real careful breakdown. Like someone may not understand why I might be excited to go to Popeye. Someone may not even understand why I might be annoyed that I have to use the. I mean, just like certain small things that feel minute and like unimportant to someone else back home. But if you don't have that, because then you'll feel alone. You'll feel like lonely in your experience. And once you have that buildup of loneliness, I mean, then all kind of other stuff happens that you don't want to have to deal with, like feeling depressed, feeling disconnected. Then you don't want to go back home because you don't feel connected to the people back home. But then you don't know what country to go because you don't know how to break friends. I was actually sharing on my IG story today, like making friends even as an adult abroad in itself is a process, let alone like, you know, like you need friends. I'm sorry. Like, even if you're a person that probably had one best friend back home, like you need community. You cannot do this alone, even if you are married. Like you need some form of community. You need people to connect with, because there are certain things that you just need to talk it out like all the time, you know? So I totally agree with you. And you can't just go the route of like just locals and just, no.
Or, you know, you can, but it's also like, you should think about why. I think there, if that is what you choose, like if you are separating yourself from every American in the world, you're from America, you're separating yourself from Americans. Okay, great for you. Whatever.
Right.
Not going to judge your choices, but think about what is behind that, right? Like
absolutely,
and what you're losing by doing that, because no matter what you think, you are losing something. And I know that for a lot of us, I think expats can get a bad rap, particularly in the expat community, because a lot of us are like, oh yeah, I'm an expat, but I'm not that kind of expat, right? Like I'm not those people over there. Right? I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? Like I'm not the expat that's gonna expect everything to be just like I want it. But you know what? there are things that I want to be the way I want it, right? Like, and of course, like I'm not imposing my will on the country, right? I'm not saying like I cannot stand Mexico City because I can't, like, I walked in a nail shop and no one spoke English. Like that's not what's happening. But there are still things that I want the way I want it. And for me not to acknowledge that, and for me to look at other people who are maybe have the same feelings but are expressing it in a different way, is not really being true to the experience, right? Like that person who's complaining about the way they want it, that might not be how you go about it, but you still have some of those same feelings yourself, right? Like, aren't there days when you're in China where you're like, I just want a little bit more English, just a little tiny, like,
oh my goodness, right?
Like,
you know what? And it's crazy because I was in a relationship before. I recently broke up with him, and I was spoiled because he spoke Chinese. And right now, I feel like I'm on the struggle bus because he was saying everything for me. Like I was, like calling Kuaidi, which is like your packages, and just using Taobao, which is where we order stuff on. It's like Amazon, but like on steroids, because you can like take a picture of an item and like the thing shows up. And like having someone that can help to translate, like I'm like, it's like humble pie now for me. Like I'm literally like, okay. And that's where you get vulnerable because you need support. Like now I'm like asking my friend's boyfriend, can you translate this? Can you help? So there's definitely those moments where I'm like, damn, I should have decided to take some Chinese lessons when I first got here. Like, why didn't I do this? You know? So yeah, I think that the language barrier is probably, definitely, it's definitely the most challenging thing. Like I know I know super basic, like goodbye, have you eaten? For anybody that's on here, like you learn how to say that. Stefan Lama, which is like, have you eaten? They smile. If you want to get like a Chinese person to like smile, just be like Stefan Lama in the middle of the day. Like they just warm up because that's not like a popular phrase. Like hello, goodbye, I'm leaving. The check. Right. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, there's so yeah, it's one of those things where it's like I don't think people recognize, especially if you haven't lived abroad before, I don't think you recognize how much when you're thrown into a completely foreign environment, how soothing and how good for your emotional well-being it can be to have familiar things, right? Like it can be really good for you to have something that is like home when everything is foreign. Because like, yes, you go on vacation for a week or two and like you use your broken Spanish or Chinese or French or whatever it is. But when you got to do that every single day, like, yeah. And of course, it's up to us to learn more, right, of the language of a country we choose to be in. But it's also, I'm not saying I want Mexico to like, I'm not demanding that they speak English, but every once in a while when I can find someone who speaks English, it's just a wash of relief. Like this isn't going to be harder than my current skill level, right? Like I can get to know you a little bit better because we can communicate better. So that's right. So that's good. Okay, but so you just said something that I'm not about to let you slide on. By the way, hold up. Debbie, thank you, girl. Thank you. You were dating. You were in a relationship in China. Okay. Y'all, okay, drop your questions in. What do you want to know? What do you want to know about Nicole's experience? I want to know about dating in China, right? Because I don't think I've ever heard anybody talk about it yet. So we're going to talk about dating in China. All right. Y'all, I'm telling you, drop questions in. Okay, so Nicole.
Yes,
Daddy. Who was he? How'd you meet him? What's his name? What's his parents do?
I know, right?
Tell us everything. Did your mama meet him? What's going on, girl? Tell us. Okay, tell us whatever you want to share. Please.
Sure. No, I'm an open book pretty much. No, I met this wonderful guy. He's still wonderful. We're just not together. But I met him actually at a Black Expo event, actually. Okay. The first Black Expo event that I went to here in China. And he was actually from the continent. He was from Uganda. And yeah, we met each other there in November. And then, yeah, we were going steady for like I'm 15, but yeah. We had a whole relationship for about a year. I feel like I like manifested him right away.
Okay, because you got there in what, September?
I got there in August, and then met him in November.
Look at this.
I'm big on manifestation too. So like a lot of my friends, they knew that like I told all of them, I'm like, I'm gonna get me a baby, because a lot of people were like, oh, you're gonna go to China, you gonna meet anybody? I'm like, yes, I am. And sure enough, like I was like, okay, universe, we gonna work like this. All right, this is what we doing today. And I met him at an event.
Nice. Can we pause real quick for a community manifestation for a bae for me? Can we in Mexico? Can we all hold hands together? Can we do that? Let's just hold hands, everybody. Breathe it in. My perfect man for me is on his way, right? We're doing this. Okay. All right. Back on track.
He's out there. He's thinking about you right now.
He's on his way. But truly,
he is on his way.
Like, the way I've been acting, like, unless he shows up at my front door and says he's the perfect guy for me, like, it's probably like,
yeah,
I need to get out of the house
out
more.
there. You just have to believe. I mean, one of the things that I say, Sheeta, honestly, I was actually having this conversation with 2 Black women yesterday, and probably why I was inspired to start coaching. To be completely honest, like, one of the things that I said to myself before moving to China, because I am looking for my husband. Every platform that I go on now, I tell people I'm looking for my husband. But one of the things that I had to get real with myself was, if I move to China, am I open to dating a Chinese man? Like, I had to get real. And I had to speak to my therapist about this. This wasn't like a yes or no, like, because I'm all about Team Black love. But I had to really sit with myself and say, like, am I okay with that idea? And once I felt comfortable with that idea, that is when I say, okay, I am ready. I can then say okay to China. I meet a lot of women, you know, who tell me that they don't. And I'm just like, not to say there aren't Black men here in China, because they're all over. A lot of African men specifically. But people will say they're not open to that. And I'm just like, if that's something that's of high importance to you, then I would say maybe this is not the place you should go, because you don't want to set yourself up. You always want to set yourself up to win, you know, like
Right.
you want to be real. You know, it's just like me thinking about where I'd like to go next. Like, I've been waiting for your chat to tell me about you finding your day, you know, so that I can know that if I go to Mexico, that's a possibility on the list. But, you know, between you, I don't know, Stephanie, I'm waiting to tell me something.
Listen.
So that, but I just think, like, no joke aside, but I feel like that's something that you should think about when you're moving abroad, like, especially if you're single, like, think about whether or not, you know, if you would be willing to date that majority community that's there, so that you're not, like, upset, like, if it really just doesn't happen, you know? Even though I met a brother, I met a gorgeous African man, but I know that for some people, they don't want any of that. And I'm like, well, honey, UPS is not coming to your door. Like, this is not.
I was really hoping. I keep hoping, like, who's that knocking in the hallway? Open the door. Look out. Like, that's him. Okay. So you are open to dating a Chinese man and marrying a Chinese man.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm leaving and soon. But yeah, but no. But I'm saying, like, because I know that I want to find a husband. Well, I want a husband to find me. I'm not finding him, but he's gonna find me. But that was like a real deal, like, conversation. Like, I think I had like several therapy sessions talking about this, because, you know, like, I totally believe in Black love, but I had to be okay with that decision, because two things can't add up. Like, I can't say I want a husband, I want him to look like this, and then I'm like hopping on a plane to China and knowing that statistically speaking, it's not gonna work in my favor. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I think that the universe conspired and gave me, you know, what I wanted at the time. But I know that was, some people say it's luck, whatever. I think the universe is working out for me. But I know that other people definitely dated, like, other, you know, nationalities and things like that. But that's because they came here knowing that they're okay with that, you know. But far more often than not, I find people be like, oh, no, I wouldn't. I'm not interested. Or sometimes the other things, they feel like Chinese dudes are not interested in them, you know. But for anyone that's watching this, I think that's something you should definitely think about. That's something that's really important to you. Because, yeah.
Okay.
Something to
So
think
your
about.
girls are in the comments talking about their dating experience in China, but most of them, it looks like, have not dated Chinese people. Have you ever gone on a date with a Chinese man?
I haven't, but I've been.
Okay.
But there's a guy around the corner that, like, keeps, like, talking me up. He keeps chatting me up. I feel like as I'm leaving, all these Chinese men are chatting me up, like, chatting me up. Sorry, I'm sorry, that's like Jamaican term. It just means like they're trying to, like, talk to me and, like, make advances at me. And, like, this other guy told me he got married too soon, and he's gonna, like, hook me up with his friend. So I think some of them are open, but I don't think that's, like, a common theme. But, like, I think if you're around some people who maybe they're used to being around a lot of foreigners, sometimes they're more open. And the thing about it is that traditionally Chinese men are shy. So, like, if you're from, like me, like, I'm from New York, I'm used to dudes like, yo, ma, or, you know, someone trying to say something to you. Chinese dudes are not going to do that. So they could actually like you, and they may not approach you in that way, you know? And even just from other men from other cultures, they don't do that. So sometimes them not saying anything doesn't necessarily mean that they're not interested in you either. And that's something I've learned through just talking to people from other backgrounds and ethnicities. Like, they don't move the way that we do. So sometimes, you know, sometimes being cognizant of that is also important. So, like, you know, being a little seductive, do a little smile, and I'm over here giving dating tips. I'm not a dating coach, but you know, it helps.
So I guess that's what I was going to ask you, because I struggle with this in Mexico. How do you go from the shy guy or reserved person chatting you up to act, if you were interested in going down this path? How do you go from the reserved person chatting you up to actually taking it to maybe a date? Like, what do you know in China, how this, or with a Chinese man and a foreign woman, because I want to be specific here, I mean, how that transition typically happens?
I mean, from my observation, I think like smiling and just talking a lot to them, like, like being flirty. I feel like the guy around the corner, like I come to, he's like, why you not gonna stay here? Why you not gonna come by? Like, like I think it's
Right.
just like things that we kind of know, like to do other, like it's like a lot of smiling and like acting like, oh, I feel like they like that. I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it. Um, and that's true what the girls say in the comments. Sometimes they want to practice their English. I've been teaching at a university all day. I don't want to come home and teach them too. It's so funny. That is hilarious. But some of the guys I know, they actually speak English. But I think some of them are just curious. Yeah, I think it's curious, or it could just be like they're interested in you. I
Okay.
always say I live in possibility, so it's kind of like I'm always like I always add that extra layer of like what could also be true, but I always want to add that. So just like how they're saying in the comments is translating, and those can be true, but because I live in possibility, I'm like, or I'm like hot, and they're like the most beautiful black woman they've come across, and this is the opportunity to get to know me, and now they're using it. Like I
Yes,
just
I
feel
love that.
like,
I love
because
that.
it's like those can be true, but I get to add on something else because I want to feel
Yes.
good too. Like why
Yes.
and it could also be true that they want to translate their language, but like they could choose to speak to everyone, but
Mhm.
they're talking to me. Like
I love
I'm
that,
special.
yeah, that you live in
It's
possibilities because it like
I
it
live in
opens up so much. I haven't heard someone say that before. That's
yeah
really meaningful. You live in possibilities. That's great.
yeah. I feel like
Um, yeah,
it's
it's
important.
awesome. I have a hard time here when talking to men to know when like I feel you flirting, but now what? Because unless I'm supposed to ask you out, there's no forward action. And that's what I'm curious about, I think, in China is how that forward action happens. Here, I think when I talk to men, I get asked like 1,000 questions. The last time I was with a friend and we met two men, the questions were like, specifically, where do you live? And I'd give like a neighborhood and be like, no, but really where in there? And it was like I feel
Mm,
like you want me to tell you like the exact building I live in, and it feels kind of
right.
flirty. But
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what is
yeah.
that's my experience has been that I get asked a lot of questions, and
See,
then there's nothing. That's like, okay,
see, and
now
then
what?
that's when
There's no clothes. There's no clothes, right?
See, that's when having a local friend is probably important now because then you could actually have someone to really break down what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because one of the greatest things that I've learned from moving abroad, just in all my experiences, that like dating, for example, like I realized that dating is such a Western concept, like even more so an American concept, right? In a lot of cultures, like dating is not really a thing. Or if they're talking to you, like I remember I was talking to this guy, Cameroonian guy, and he was like, yeah, like if I'm talking to you, that means I'm only talking to you. Like there's, how like in the States, you're dating to someone else and you're trying to find out, okay, are you talking to 5 other women? So just to solidify how serious we are. So I think sometimes I find myself, depending on where someone's from, trying to ask them questions about their cultural norms because sometimes I find that they're so different. So someone's actions can mean something like to me in the US and to them it can like not mean that at all, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think that's where like I try to live in possibility and not try to just jump off the handle because like I can get like, oh no, you're not gonna say this or not, you're not gonna, like I know I can get into that space, but just being more conscious of that. And I think having people who are from, the locals, it's helped in therapy, just like talking things out, and also makes me make to understand culture. Like, why
Mm-hmm.
do this person like do this thing in the US they don't do this thing, or and that takes a lot of patience too, because sometimes if you want to be courted or you want someone to treat you a certain way that you're accustomed to, you get like it really humbles you if you're with
Yes.
someone else and like
Yeah.
they're not doing it and you're like, and now it almost feels like a compromise to like your
Yeah.
values and like who you are. So I think that's kind of the part that's like can be really uncomfortable or just kind of weird. But I think when you have that knowledge base of like the culture and all of that, then you can be like, oh, okay, this doesn't necessarily mean that. And that's what helps with asking questions, to the point we said before, like asking questions, being playful. And as Black women especially, we have a right to always want to watch our back. And I mean, if you're in any foreign country, you always want to be safe. You always want to make sure that like you're not being put in any uncomfortable situation. So there is like a lot of layers. And then of course, let's say if you have baggage from a previous relationship, and depending on what someone did, we carry those things. So I think just having like an open mind, and then also asking questions, having a local, okay, she said, and they may date someone not local, not from your country. Yeah.
So like you dating someone, yeah, who's not from China and not from the US.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother ballpark too, because I feel like that's a whole, I mean, from the stories I hear, I mean, I'm very big on manifestation. So the reason why I say I'm big on manifestation is because I try to be careful of bringing a majority's experience and making it my own if I haven't fully experienced it. So in one aspect, I can say that I hear that people say, you know, especially like men who come overseas or they're in the army, they're like over, you know, they're trying to have like their playtime, you know, and like that's also like not cool. So I do try to be open, like, Nicole, we're not gonna attract that. Like, we just not gonna do that. So I try not to have those experiences, but I know that that's what majority people share. Because I mean, sometimes part of the expat life can feel, you almost sometimes feel like you're in college and you're just an adult. Like, you know, it's like that combination of feeling like you're back at the door and people just kind of living recklessly. No one's trying to be serious. And then trying to kind of like go through that mess to find out who's really serious, who actually wants to settle down or have kids or get married. So that's also a process.
Yeah. In some communities, I remember feeling that when I was on my career break and I traveled around a bunch, I get into town, I would see the Black community and there were all these like, ooh, new, beautiful people. And then it would quickly dawn on me that it's like being a transfer student in college, right? Like half these people have already slept with each other, right? Like, probably more than half. Like half are currently sleeping with each other and the other half have before. And you don't know what's going on because there are no clear, like very few people are claiming each other, but they're like you can feel something's going on when everyone's in the room, but no one is. And it was like, you know what I'm going to do? None of this. None of this. I'm tapping. I see what's going on here. I don't feel like trying to figure out what is going on here. I'm out. And so I think if you are dating within expat communities, especially close expat communities, so like if you're Canadian and you have a Canadian community in Brazil, right? Like there's probably some intermingling happening there, right? And so that's another part of it too, is like there's history that you might not know about that you might have to carefully maneuver as you enter into the community if you want to actually stay in the community. Yeah. So
let me tell you something. I lived in the UAE, and the UAE is like a speck compared to Shanghai. And I lived in Abu Dhabi, and I was like, I'm only dating people that live in Dubai. Like I was like, we're gonna have another emirate. Like I was like, we are not doing this. Like
we're not doing this.
We're not sharing community property. I'm sorry. Like this is not what I'm signing up for. I think in Shanghai is so big, but I do think that it's hard because there are like a lot of women, and I think there's certain people who are like more social than others, and there's like certain men that everybody knows. So I usually try to stay away from the like most popular like dude. Like I like have my own ways of like trying to get that person that barely comes outside. I'm like, people see me pop up with him. They're like, where you found him? I'm like, you don't need to know.
That's what I do manifesting. My barely go outside and someone else's barely go outside. I was actually talking to, I think, Adelia about this. Because a friend of mine is here visiting and she went to a bar on Thursday night. And Adelia was like, you should have gone. Your husband might be there. And I was like, you think my husband is in a bar on a Thursday night? Like, he's not. I'm going to bed at 8:15. He's probably going to bed by like 9:30. He's not in a bar.
Exactly.
He's not. It's not. So that's what I need the like. Nobody has ever seen him before. That's what's gonna happen. Mm-hmm.
Yes,
We're
I feel like we're gonna
manifesting
manifest.
it. We're
I think we're gonna
yes.
manifest your
Yes.
man.
Yes.
I feel
All of
it.
us
Like
around
I'm
the world,
all about
all of our
it.
energy. We're gonna manifest
Yes.
this. Yes, I feel it.
Listen, and
Okay.
that's another thing. I'm not a dating coach, but if I would tell anyone here, especially women that's looking to be an expat, also have fun with it. Like, trust me when I say dear in my heart that I definitely want to find my husband and I want to have kids, but just have fun with it, because if you don't, like, you're gonna carry so much like anger and stuff. Like, love on yourself, dress up, have fun. Even with guys you're not interested, like, go and just practice, like, talk to them, like, be around people who are encouraging, because sometimes we feed off of people's energy and we don't realize that. So if someone's having a horrible time all the time, then you'll probably not even try, because you're just using the energy from that person and you haven't really put yourself out there. Of course, you don't want to be with your friend. You're both competing on like who's going to find the next guy when you're out. I will hope not, but sometimes that happens. That happened in the UAE a lot. But just kind of be mindful of the people that you keep around you, because energy definitely, like, it travels. It's really real. And I'm not saying that someone should paint like a false picture for you, but you always, as I said, if you could just live in some possibility, have fun, and like also if you know people that have real positive expat stories dating, like talk to them, like see what they did. Where did they go? Did they go to an art exhibit? Did they go, you know what I mean? Like, where were they hanging out? Was it some new spot that you've never been to? Because for me, even when I was in the UAE, like, even the guys that I attracted, like, I'm gonna tell you this gonna make Sheeta, I think Sheeta will be amazed by this story, and probably Adrian, because I know them right now. I went to this event, and this is when I was in the UAE. I went to this event in Dubai. There's this place called why can't I think? Miss Lily's. If you any here from New York, you know Miss Lily's. There's a restaurant there, but they actually have a place in Dubai. Went to this event, didn't even know it was a special event, but they thought I was nice, so they let me in. So there you go. I'm already in an event I'm not supposed to be at, but I got in. And this guy's trying to chat me up. And I'm just like, he was handsome as all hell, but he's chatting me up. I'm like, he's chatting me up, so whatever. This was in Dubai, by the way. Remember I told you guys I live in Abu Dhabi, so you go to Dubai. And gave me his number, went out on a date with him. Do you know that after the fact, I realized that this man was an ex-pro footballer? Like, I Wikipedia this man, and he was a whole pro footballer, like soccer in the States. And I was just like, what? Like I legit wanted to date with this guy, and like, I'm like, how do I manifest these like things? I mean, I still have his information, like, and it was because he had to leave Dubai. That's why that never like continued. He was living football life. But the whole point is just like, I could have never thought that up. Like, so I want you all to be inspired. You never know. You never know.
Yes.
You just never know. Yes. Professional athlete. Yes. Professional agent. I don't think I told you this story. Yes, girl. You was a whole
I do want to talk more about dating.
Okay.
I want to talk about living in the UAE, but since we're talking about dating, let's start there. What was dating like? So you told us you weren't trying to date in Abu Dhabi because the community was too small, or were there other reasons as well?
The community, because the UAE is relatively small. UAE, United Arab Emirates, for those of you that are watching that may not know, it's in the Middle East. It's right by Oman and Saudi Arabia. If you know the Burj Khalifa, that's where I used to live prior to China. In the UAE was quite interesting too, because I thought there specifically, I felt very like over-sexualized. I think being a Black woman in the Middle East, like my experience was I became very self-conscious there because, it's a Muslim country. I felt that there was like these ideas that I think that most men had about like American Black women, about like, I don't know, there's like these things that pass around, just like we're easy or maybe promiscuous, or so I think sometimes some of the conversation or things that they would say, I don't know what they thought I was gonna like do like within that conversation. So I think in the beginning it really wasn't like pleasurable for me at all. I think I learned through those experiences. I didn't know that it was like that at all, and then when I started getting like more intentional on like who I'd actually like seek out, and then I started to like give up on apps, and I was like, I'm gonna set an intention, I'm gonna meet people out, and then that's when I would actually meet people out, like going to like different parties, going to different like social events, like the one that I just shared, and then it got better. But I think because it's so small, like your pickings are so slim. If I were to be honest, and just like the thing I said before, like the Middle East is a little different from I say China, is because a lot of things are dictated by religion, right? So not only are you thinking about, let's say, dating someone who's like Arab per se, now you have to think about like if you're not like Muslim, for example, would you be willing to like change your religion if it were to get that serious? So that was like things that I was not necessarily willing to do. Now there were black men there, but majority of them were from the armed forces or the army and that sort of a thing. Other cultures, but I feel like they were kind of the majority. And at that point, I can't say that I was so interested in dating like men that was like in the army, because most of them had like kids back home, and like how that stereotypical like drama where they kind of like have like 5 families. Yeah. So it wasn't. I did it, but I think I did it that's when I started to adapt that ideology of just like, I'm going to have some fun. I can't be going out thinking that we're going to get married the following week. And I felt like once I started doing that, then I noticed that the floodgates started to open up, and I found it to be much easier. Okay. But it's harder, like when you're older, like, I always say in my Wendy Williams, I'm a woman of a certain age, and you know what you want it now. But then I had to, but now I'm just like, I live in that space of possibilities. I do all the things that I have control over. I put myself in spaces where I know that maybe it'll increase my chances. And even now, like now thinking about like this whole like transitional and going, now I'm just like, I'm waiting for you and Adelia and Stephanie to tell me that like dating is booming in Mexico, so I could know if that's the next place I should be. So I'm waiting for you ladies to.
Okay, so I'm going to make a pledge to all of you watching. I am going to go out to a place where there are humans after dark sometime this week. And, God, I can't believe I'm saying this. I have set up a profile on Bumble. It is truly just a photo with no words, nothing else. I went to fill in the blanks and I was like, girl, I can't do it. I can't be bothered. I opened the photo and I saw the first photo of the first person. I closed the app and I haven't opened it again. I am going to spend 10 minutes a day on Bumble this week, and I'm going to go out once of a daytime. I know I'm doing a daytime activity this week, and once in the evening. Adele, you heard me. If I'm committing to this, you're committing to it too. So we are doing that this week. And next week, I don't know what I'm talking about next week, but next week I will tell you that I'm married. Like it's happening. It's happening. We're manifesting this.
Listen, you just never know. No, I'm telling you, like, I'm all about creating the ideal expat, but like my whole thing is through discovery. Like sometimes we don't know what we want, right? Sometimes we don't know what we want, and it does. I think the beauty in getting what we don't want, right? Sorry, I just not. Is that we get clear on like what it is that we actually want. Like, I mean, I think that's the beautiful. So I don't think that you should just throw that away. But like, if you're like, you know what, like, I don't like dudes that are like in the club until 10 because I know I'm an early bird. But there's always that one guy that probably his friend dragged him out.
Got dragged there, right? I was like, if I go to a bar, I need to meet the man who got dragged there and doesn't want to be there.
He got dragged there by his friend because he's probably thinking about you. Yes. And he's thinking about you, and then you're both gonna have that awkward conversation, like, I was supposed to be here, and you're like, like I feel like this could be. I live in possibility, guys. So I feel like these are the things, because I feel like between community, relationships, and I know Adelia does a good job talking about finances. Like I just feel like you want, that's why I say ideal. And I love that you use the word ideal, because even I had tell me your dreams. I think I'm actually going to change mine to ideal. Is that like you really want to, if you have all these things filled, then I do think that living abroad could be long lasting. But if you just have these holes, like you don't have any community, you don't have someone in your life, then I can see how someone can be like, oh, I can't do this. I don't want to do it. And like, I love my girls and all that, but like, I'm not trying to hang out with you all weekend, every weekend. Like, I want a boo. I want some love. And I think that one of the things that we have to be courageous is saying that it's okay to say you want love. It doesn't mean you're desperate. It doesn't mean something is wrong with you. It doesn't mean, you know what I mean? Just the same way you could say you want money. Just the same way you could say you want friendships. Like, these are, we are human beings. And like, this whole idea that the only thing that like, you should want to go abroad is for experiencing someone's culture, I think is absurd. Like, you could want to experience someone's culture. You could want to meet someone, the guy of your dreams or woman of your dreams, however way you flow. You could want to make money. You could pay off your debts. You could want to live somewhere. I really want to normalize all these things, and they can all happen together. But having people say, like, that's why I always bring up me dating, because I feel like, I know I didn't post them all over my page, but I'm like, no, because we need to like normalize these things. Like, yes, like I want to bae, and it's okay. I want my money, and it's okay. I want to be healthy, and that is okay. Like, yes.
Definitely.
And that's why I'm so thankful to be on this platform with you, because that's how I found you. Like, I wanted to find a Black woman that was on a career break, and I find you and Stephanie. And the way that you're speaking to Black women and making it so normal, and the ease too. That's why I'm saying having fun with dates. Like, it could be, we can make like fun, like you could get up with your girls, and like my girlfriends back home, when I started going dating actively, I would text them and I would set goals. Like, just like what you did on the live, I was like, okay, I'm gonna set 2 dates for the week. You know, or if it was a workout goal, I would set it. And like, they held me accountable. You know, we have fun with it. Like, I'm talking about, you know, I take a picture of my outfit, girl, you think I'm cute? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, if I'm losing weight, I think you just make it fun. And I think that we could definitely have more women moving abroad and having a more holistic and fun experience. And then also being intentional about the cities, the countries that they choose. And we can just change this whole paradigm of like, this hates to suck and this and that and all that. Nah, we don't need that. We don't need that.
Especially if you're, like you said, it's really important. And I don't think I've heard someone phrase it the way you did, that if you want to find your partner, you're moving to a place where you're open to the people there. Like, it might not, like you said, it might not be a local, right? It might not be someone who's from that country, but your odds greatly improve if you're open to it. And so that's it.
Yeah.
My mom was in the comments saying she needs grandkids. So clearly she wants me to be out here having sex.
Yes. We're going to get your
apparently
daughter
everyone's aligned with this.
Yeah. Listen. I think just, I know that people hate it's getting so overused and normalized, but at the same time, I can see why it's so important, because I think, and then if you don't see it, you don't think people are doing it, and then you might feel weird about it, or you don't, you know. So I think that all those things get to be true all at the same time. So I'm glad that you have Adelia. That's awesome to have someone to hold you accountable. You know, in Mexico, both of you are going to tell me about your dates.
We're going out. There may not be dates this week, but we're going out. Next week we'll be able to tell you that we made an effort. But last time we had made an effort before, but last time we did it, we were sitting around like, these men are strange. The food is bad. The drinks are mediocre. Like, this wasn't the right spot. So we're going to find a better spot next time.
Yeah. And just start finding where the local people like hang out.
We went to a local place and it was not.
It was not nice. Well, I'm waiting for you to tell me all the spots. So like, when the time I make it to Mexico City, like if I don't have an engagement ring on my finger by that time, like, I hope that you're going to be walking me through this process. I hope you all watching this, you know,
by the time you come to Mexico City, my bae will have friends I can introduce you to.
Oh!
Yes.
I like this.
We're going to do it. We're manifesting.
I like this.
We're manifesting. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
So the UAE, you were there for 5 years.
Yes.
You
Mhm.
dated in
Yes.
Dubai.
Yes.
Um, did you enjoy dating while you were there?
It was cool. It was cool. Yeah. I had fun. I had
Okay.
fun.
All
Yeah.
right. I feel like
But I
there's
think that
something there.
the reason why I say that, because I think in the beginning of my Abu Dhabi experience, it was
Mhm.
so exploratory. Hence why like I'm all in the self discovery. I don't think I fully knew like who I was as a person and more or less what it was that I actually needed. I realized
Okay.
I was unlearning what I thought society, my
Mm.
family, and just like I felt like I wanted
Mhm.
those things. So I think as I started to grow into
Mhm.
myself, questioning myself, reading, I started to realize, oh, okay, these are the characters. I literally wrote down things like characteristics, not creating a list of what my basis, but what are things that I value. I wasn't really clear on my values and what does that
Right.
actually look like. Like of course I could say what I want someone to look like aesthetically, like of course, like
Mhm.
who doesn't, right? But it was like, what's something that I need in a mate right now, especially as someone who wants to continue living internationally, right? So I think I needed to have those things in place so that when I went on dates and I was talking to people, I kind of knew the kind of questions I wanted to ask, what kind of things I want. I felt like being a baby again or like a teenager. I don't know. I don't know if people tend to like know these things right away, but I didn't. So because of that being more introspective, it really allowed me, because I know people say, oh, I'm dating to marry, I'm dating with intention. But some people may not know what their values are, like what they really care about, or what are qualities outside from just like, oh yeah, we need to be financially secure. Like, do you need him to care about this topic? Like, do you want him to talk about Black Lives Matter? Like, do you want him to like travel to, you know what I mean? Like these type of things. So I had like this piece where I did a lot of introspection. So that's why I didn't jump out the gates dating.
Okay.
I think so. That's why when you said that, that's why I had to think about it. It was like I had to kind of know exactly who I am as a person, what I value, and then more or less how to show up when those opportunities, came up for me. So yeah, so that's why I say that, because I think a lot of us don't know I mean, some people don't take the time to really, we just kind of go to a country. I always say, I had posted something last week and someone commented, and I thought it was so perfect. It's like, wherever you go, here you are, right? So even though you're leaving a country, you're still technically bringing yourself, right? So if you have like your stuff that you probably never worked through, or you've never questioned it, you're just bringing it to the new country, right? And the beautiful thing, it's like I sent you an email, like sometimes, expat like gives you that introspection that you probably didn't even ask for, you probably didn't
Mhm.
want, the self reflection, and now you're forced to kind of deal with yourself in a way, that can be transformative. Like, okay, these
Mhm.
are the things I care about, these are the things that I want. So, beginning of my expat career, that's exactly what I was doing. I was really, I guess you could say, unlearning and healing and doing all of that, because yeah, I
Okay.
had these, man, my ideologies, man, I don't even know. Like, I don't know who I thought I was and some of the things I thought about.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right. I went through your IG a little bit and I found some things I wanted to talk about.
Sure. So
One, I saw you wrote expat life will come for you. And I know it was in context, but let's talk about that.
yeah. Well, I mean, just on the same vein of talking about like introspection, first of all, like I think I kind of alluded to it earlier about, first of all, like making friends as an adult is hard. Um, I have definitely gone through like friends who, like, I guess people call it, I've gone through more things through friendship stuff, like as an adult, that I've never even dealt with as like a teenager. Like people
Hmm.
that would like hang out with me and then all of a sudden just like stop talking to me, and that's like emotionally taxing. Like, I don't care what regardless, like we're just humans with feelings. Like someone could like be your friend like for like weeks upon weeks and all of a sudden just stop talking to you, or, you know, relationship, like being in relationships abroad as well. Like, I think that that's also unique. I think just even dating with people, dating someone from a different culture, that's also
Hmm.
the opportunities for growth. Like, and then you're like trying to find this nice fine line of um, are you being unreasonable or things like that. Sometimes cultural dynamics will come up. I think the country itself sometimes, like certain policies, depending on the school or the organization that you work for, sometimes people might tell you that you, like in my school, for example, I don't work there anymore, so I can say it, but like when we had like a holiday, we would have to make up the day, like on a Saturday. I'm like, what kind of foolery is this? Like,
Okay.
um, definitely, I would say a lot, the moments when you're by yourself and you're like in deep thought, you get so much of that time. Um, I think like you find yourself like questioning a lot of things that probably you wouldn't probably have time to sit and question and wonder in terms
Right.
of different aspects of your life. I think sometimes there's guilt. I mean, like especially when there was like a whole lot of things with the Black Lives Movement and like I'm here in China, like sometimes feeling very far removed, sometimes not feeling like you have a voice. Like can you talk about it if you're like chilling in China, living kind of like your best life?
Mm-hmm.
I think also the perception. I think there's this toss up of like if you are showing all your, and then for me it's like I love smiling, like it's just something that I do. So as a result of that, people always think that I'm always happy all the time, and at the same time I feel like why should I always have to share something that's, I mean, like I try to be vulnerable and share things when they're not going well, but I feel like if you complain about something, there's also this idea that you should just come home then if something is bad. So sometimes I feel like this, it's almost like your human experience is sometimes taken away from you. And I think that's why like
Yes.
having friendships back home, I mean, have friendships in the country you're living with or just expat friends is so important, because sometimes you don't have the space to really truly share, because now it seems like you're coming from a place of too much privilege. And yes, there is
Mm-hmm.
a privilege, but I recently said out loud, like, I made a choice to come here. Like, it's not like anybody else with a passport can also leave their country. And I know everyone have different circumstances, but generally speaking, everyone, if you have a passport, you can leave it if you're a U.S. citizen, unless you have like other stuff, which I mean, I'm hoping that that's not the case. But um, but sometimes there's like this, like I always hear this thing called survivor's remorse, or like I don't know, this guilt that I would
Mm-hmm.
feel. So sometimes I feel like I hold in a lot of feelings then, because then like if I share it to this person, they either gonna say come home, or then what's the big deal? Um, so I think as a result of that, you just sometimes you can just carry so much because
Mm-hmm.
then you feel misunderstood. Um, and I just think just transitioning, like, I think that if I were to do it differently, if someone was leaving from one country, I would say maybe try to take like a month between. Like, it was a lot for me to jump from living in the UAE to then moving to China. Like, I legit like left the UAE July, went home to literally just run around and figure out visa stuff, and then hopped on a plane like within a couple of weeks to China. So I think that I didn't give myself enough time to just readjust, because they're totally different countries, you know?
Right.
So even that was like really heavy, because I feel like I didn't even just fully get to mourn, or is it even mourn? What is it? Grieve. Excuse me. I didn't get to grieve my UAE experience, like to kind of like come to terms, like put it like a nice bow tie and like end it. And I just jumped into this. And then I became that person that was like, well, in the UAE, because I just felt like I didn't get to fully finish it and just like have some time off and then jump into another country. So if you're watching this, that's what I would advise. Maybe wait in maybe a couple months and then jump to another country, because it could kind of feel like a lot, especially if you've lived there. Like I lived in the UAE for 5 years.
Right.
So I think adjusting, and then also, I told you I raised my flag. Like I'm very big on like my culture, my identity. And sometimes you get warped in so many different cultures when you live someplace, right? It's like trying to maintain who you are as a person and want to be connected to your culture. I shared with you like the Jamaican culture, the Jamaican community here is not as intense as like my experience in the UAE, which I miss. So sometimes I'm really like making sure that I'm tuned into anything that's Jamaican or anything back home, because I don't want to lose that sense of myself, especially
Mm-hmm.
because I'm not always hanging out with Jamaican people all the time, which to me is like a value. It's a value for me. Um, so there's like all these like other aspects of like myself when I talk about like coming for you. I think of it more from the emotional space. And then of course, just like the obvious, like run around like within a country, getting adjusted. I mean, both places, these are not places where you get to question when things are not the way you want them. So learning how to bite your tongue a lot, right? And if you're not a person like to bite your tongue, like, you can learn to pack a lot of patience, for sure. So I think just those, sometimes it just weighs heavy because now you're trying to find out, like, am I being reasonable? Am I being like whiny? Can I do this? And then also I find that even when I meet other people, like sometimes I have friends who are from African countries and I find that they take it, some of the things that I might complain about is not a big deal to them, like to someone else. So sometimes you can really feel crazy when you're experiencing something and someone like does not get it. But I definitely say like the growth, the transformation, sometimes feeling alone in just like what it can be really heavy. And sometimes it happens and it's so intense that it's not every moment you can like share it with someone. So sometimes carrying it and like learning how to be resilient, learning how to deal with it. Definitely some of the challenges I would say, like with being an expat, just overall, and then you add a whole pandemic and, you add a pandemic in the mix and people are like, do I want to have money and have a job or do I want to go home? Like those are some real deal questions that people are asking now.
Yes, definitely. One of the other things I saw that it relates so completely well to what you just said was that living abroad is not a vacation from real life. And so some people think like they see Nicole and she's in China and it must be fun and games all day, right? Or some people moving abroad I see people in these groups planning to move abroad and it sounds like they think that once they leave the US shores, all of their problems are going to stay in the US and wherever they're going is going to be this wonderful. And it's like, well, we about to learn something together, aren't we? Right? Like,
no, everything is on full screen. Everything comes out like, my mommy's always saying what comes out in the dark, what I've done in the dark comes out in the light. Like, I feel like everything feels like it's like magnified. Like everything. I mean, I highly suggest that if you are moving abroad, definitely have a therapist that you see, have some type of coach. Because even just moving abroad, I felt like it took me about 2 years, even in the UAE, to fully adjust. Because there's so much culture shock. I mean, even when I was there, and even in China, like I find myself even still, sometimes I walk and I'm like, yo, I really live in China. Like, I don't know if you have that experience in Mexico. Like, I will literally like, wait, this is my life. And sometimes it almost makes me want to cry. Sometimes it makes me feel like I have to like touch the table. Like, is this real? Like, am I really in China? Like, it's so weird. Like sometimes my mind and like everything doesn't like add up. So it's not like this, like you jump off the plane and you're like, like you may be doing the things, but your mind hasn't just fully like I live here. Like this is my life right now.
It's also not something, just to jump in real quick, that all of your people will be able to fully process either. So some people will never be able to understand your life wherever it is you go. And they're going to think it's something different than it is. I know when I was on my career break, one of the things you said before rang true with me. And it was that like, I can't tell someone that I'm having a bad day in Switzerland, right? Like there are people in my life I can tell, but if I write that on Facebook, it's going to come across differently than how I mean it. Because people think that like I'm traveling and I'm not working. So like every day must be marshmallows and roses. And it's not. There were a lot of days where I was lonely and I was exhausted and I wasn't sure, like, is this depression? Because I wasn't seeing my therapist anymore. I'm like, I didn't know what was going on with me in a lot of moments. And it was like, but who can truly understand this? Who do I talk to? And there aren't a lot of people in that situation, which is why I'm saying if you move to a country, keep some of them expat friends, like keep friends around you who understand the experience, because
you have to.
No matter how close people are to you, and some people will always be the same, but all them friendships not gonna make it. They're not.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know anybody who's moved abroad who's kept every single friendship. And some of it is just
Yeah.
distance, right? Like some of it is just distance. We're not there. Sometimes there could be some weirdness that you'll never understand. And it's just like, get ready to
Yeah.
make some more friends because it's, yeah.
Yes, you do. I mean, I
Mhm.
have a whole new posse of like friends that I've met on IG, legit, like
Mhm.
IG expat friends and friends between my UAE experience and now China than just like my general friendships. And that's
Mhm.
just solely based off of what you said. Like I could say something and they get it. Even
They
just
get
the
it.
whole concept of a career break, people backstage are looking at me side eye, but my expat friends get it. Like there doesn't even need to be a conversation. But for some people back home, that just seems wild and crazy. Um, like what? Like you just not gonna work? Like what do you mean?
Mhm.
So and you know, like I have to remind myself and keep myself grounded on like my goals of what I'm doing and reminding them that their experience is not mine. So I could maybe to them it sounds crazy because they associate taking time off as like something you do when you're older or those type of things. So that's why I feel like now I'm on this mission to like normalize a lot of the things that I do, even if it seems absurd.
Right.
Um, because I recognize that now I am like that one that stands out in my family just based on the choice, you know, my lifestyle choice. Um, Oh, she said a good therapist is hard to find. I could send you. My therapist has gave me a whole list, but I don't know if that's only based in New York. It was like an inventory.
Oh,
That's
okay.
a. I'll see if I can. Yeah, I'll see if I look at my email and send it to you if there's something to like
Okay.
you want to share it,
Sure.
and then once I
Okay.
have, I'm gonna have a landing page soon, so I'll also have that under there. But yeah, I think also yeah, being intentional with your therapist, excuse me, is also important. Like, um, so even just like if there's certain things that are important to you, like I have a black man, and the reason why I say this, like someone who will understand, let's say like expat life or whatever, or you know what I mean, because that might be also important, like someone that understands maybe culture or knows a little bit about things like that, or the black experience if you're black, or I think those are also things that are important for your therapist. I'm not saying that white people or people that are not black won't understand, but it's sometimes helpful. You want to choose someone that's closest to understanding
Mhm.
your lifestyle, who you are, the things that, because then they will be able to give you better insight and just like how to navigate those issues.
What's
But
funny
yeah.
about that, and we're totally off topic, but we're cool. We're cool. It's good. One of the things um, I'm sorry, I had an Eastern European therapist when I last lived in the US. And I felt like there was that gap, right? Like there's a gap that I like have to explain things to her. She doesn't always get them. But when I started talking about taking time off and not working, she didn't come at it from a perspective that I think a lot of the black community comes at it from, and that was helpful to me. She was like,
Mm,
"If you could not work, why would you work?" And I was like, "Because it's what we, you know what I mean? Like
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
remnants of slavery tell me that this is what we do, right? Like I
Right.
am West Indian. I'm supposed to have jobs, right? Like
Yes.
I am from the
Yes.
Caribbean. My whole family is. We're supposed to have. So the idea
10
of
jobs.
not, the idea of not work, if the idea of not working was so foreign to me, but she was like, those people sound horrible. Like legit, one day I was telling her about my experience, and she was like, they sound horrible, and I was like, they are, and I was like, but I don't know what to do, and she was like, do the least. And I was like, wait a minute, what? My therapist was like, give them the least amount of energy possible. Do the least amount of work you can do and keep that job and keep that going as long as you can. And I was like, we are told as black people that we always have to do twice as much, right? And I don't know that a black therapist would have told me to do twice as much, to work harder, to get past the like
True.
them being horrible towards me, right? But my Eastern European therapist was like,
Yeah.
no, no, don't do more. Don't try harder
Mm,
to prove to them that you're worthy. She was like, give them the absolute least. And I was like, I
yes.
can do that. Like I truly had this moment, like, I can do that. And she was like, yeah, you can do that. It's okay. I was like, Oh, so the point is that yes, it was harder to bridge the gap, but I
Yeah.
got advice that I don't know that I would have gotten from my own community, right?
Yeah.
Because that is not the message we're told generally. I mean, I know there are
No.
therapists out there who would tell me that, but when we have these conversations, they're usually about proving ourselves and doing more. And to have that perspective coming from someone else of like, no, girl, like you don't have to work hard. You don't have to prove yourself to them. Like if they are not deserving of you, don't give them more, give them less.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was wild for me. And so I
Yeah.
definitely in my new therapy search, I was definitely looking for a Black female therapist, but I know that my European therapist changed my life because of the
That's
messaging she
amazing.
gave me. Yeah. So
Yeah. That's
something to
actually quite
consider.
amazing. I mean, it's quite amazing. As I said, that's why I feel, how I love you and Stephanie so much, because even just the ease, the conversation about not only normalizing women, taking these sabbaticals, taking these breaks, but also having ease. And I've been
Mhm.
journaling and writing that word ease because even just from my spiritual basis, like I already know that I have like affirmations, on my board, and I always say, money comes to me easily and effortlessly. But I have never written down, that I have a life full of ease. And
Yes, and
I've
you have a
gained
right
that's
to ease. Yes, you have a
yeah,
right to
like it
it.
doesn't have to be like hustle, 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 hustle. And especially if you live in the Middle East, like one thing is that they like to take a nap, they like to relax. And I think even that's one beauty you can find when you live in these different countries. Is like, I felt like here specifically, they will work and work and work and work and work. But, and that's why one of the things that I will say that I did not like in changing from the UAE to China, and I say this to all my friends, is that I didn't like my work life balance here in comparison to the UAE. Like,
Okay.
as a teacher, I got out of work at I get out of work at 4:30. I know that for most people that work a 9 to 5, that seems early, but when you're a teacher, you're accustomed to leaving 2:45, 3 o'clock. That hour is a big difference, especially when the sun is not out and it's pretty dark. But then on the flip side, if you are interested to come to China, there are a lot of China's laws are changing in terms of like training centers and not whatnot. So I really don't know if it will be the same, but like right now, there's so many opportunities to get like other like tutoring gigs. So if
Mhm.
you're very entrepreneurial and you want to just grind, I do think China's a great place in that respect. Or if you just have a business and you're trying to get it off the ground and you want to collaborate with people, lots of opportunities here. More so, I felt like in the UAE. And I just figured I'd just throw that in there. If you're like on the fence
Okay.
between both countries or even just considering, um, but yeah, I like to talk to people about like their why, and I think that's also important. You
Yes.
should know kind of have an idea of like why you're going to a place, what you want to do, what are like your three top things about like why you want to go. You want to set yourself up to win for
Yes.
sure.
Definitely. I do want to talk because I know it's getting late over there. I'm not going to hold you
It's
too much,
it's all
but
good. It's
okay.
all good.
So I want to hit on one topic, but while I'm hitting, I don't know which way the camera's going right now. I want to hit on one topic, but while we do that, if you have questions for Nicole, this is your time to drop them in the comments. I got questions ahead of time, but a lot of them have already been answered as we're talking. I've got a couple really specific ones that we'll get to. But if you have questions and you're here live, drop them in the comments. But um, as you plan your career break and your exit from China, you're also starting a coaching program for expats, right?
Yes, yes. It's called the Expat Collective.
Ooh.
It is pretty much I designed pretty much a program to hit on some of the major points that I noticed that some people like a little I call them like a little loopholes to raise so people can have a real holistic and ideal expat experience. I don't think focusing on one thing is enough. I don't think it's sustainable. Like I don't think just saying, "Oh, I just want to make money." Like you're gonna have money, and then what's gonna end up happening? You're gonna have no friends. You're not dating. Your health is out of whack. Like I think just really wanted to offer people some like a framework so that they can actually know like why am I moving to this place? What are some of the goals that I want to achieve? that things that I wish someone sat with me and spoke about before moving. When I'm into the UAE, I mean, of course, these are things that I've figured out through trial and error. I will have a actual sign up on my IG by the middle of this week, but right now you could go to my Instagram and send me a DM if it's something that you're interested in. It'll be like 6 weeks.
Okay.
And it will be, yeah, just a 6 week program just to get you to leap into your expat journey. And even if you are expat now and maybe you're just kind of disgruntled or you're just like not feeling it and you want to maybe change it about, we could talk about some affirmations, just certain things that we can make a switch so that it could be more ideal. You can have some ease in your experience. I'm real big on just like all the different aspects of life, whether it's your finances. I love how Adelia is always educating everyone about money. You want to get your money right, your health. One of the biggest things too, when I was saying expat life will come for you, I forgot to mention this. It is really easy to gain a lot of weight abroad. And for obvious reasons, whether you're depressed or you're lonely, or just because the food is great, right? It's easy to have like these habits because you have access to like all this amazing food. You have disposable income, and those pounds, like they tack on, like, and I think just like sometimes it's not something that I hear people talk about. Just like not only just talk about like health insurance, but just like what is your wellness plan? Like, what are you going to do when you go? Like, do you care whether or not there's yoga in a spot or TRX or F45 or, what are your practices that you have in place? Because the last thing you want to do is come to a place to get your money right and then you fall sick. Like I've known women, especially Black women in both countries, who's had to have like surgeries, whether it was related to, what is the cyst? I can't even think of. Fibroids, fibroids, or I've known people who have cancer. One of my good friends had like cancer, like certain things that, like, so you want to think about what's your wellness goals for sure, like when you move abroad, because I think that that's easily like, it's overlooked. And I think it's like so important because the last thing you want is to like either not feel comfortable where you are or more like having to go home for major surgery or something that you could avoid. But I think just like, I just don't see it spoken about at all.
Okay.
So yes, I touch upon those things.
We talked about briefly, you and I, last night about people hiring because of personality, right? So like, if you're watching this video, you probably love Nicole, but
I love Sheeta.
Love you. We don't want to hire you because you're a great personality, right? We want to hire you because you're giving us, your personality is good. Yay. I'm not saying that, because you're giving us what we need. So what are the aspects of the program as you're building it that you're really excited about people experiencing?
Sure. So we pretty much really just explore like your why. And I know that some people don't know the why. So really basically giving some introspection in terms of what's the real reason, because sometimes you might say, oh, I want to make this amount of money. And maybe it's really because you don't make this amount of money back home. So maybe it's more of a conversation of maybe we need to hook you up with someone to explore a better job opportunity elsewhere, something like that. So we go through the why, we go through like finances. What are your finance goals? Like, are you trying to pay off debt, acquire income, invest? So I really want to take you through all these pockets. Dating, are you in a relationship? Are you looking to mate with someone? What are some of your goals in that aspect? And what are and then of course, kind of doing some mindset work, because I'm big on that. Like, what are your thoughts about these things? Because I really want to see what you think about that, because we carry like all these ideas that we don't realize that we have. And I want to have like a real, conversation with that, and how we can maybe change that. Very similar to like what we just did when I had a conversation with you with living in possibility and maybe going somewhere else. One of the other aspects we talk about is spirituality. Like, I'm not in every part of any religious institution, but my spiritual base is what keeps me grounded. And the reason why it's important to me is because as an expat, you know, people see us as wanderers, but you need to have something that gives you solace. And then an extension of that, if you're in, let's say you are of a specific denomination, wanting to make sure that there's, let's say, a church or like this, a place like, you know, there are actually, from what I understand, churches here, but most people would not know that because I'm in China, because, you know, it's a communist country, right? But are there groups of fellowship? I know there are fellowship groups when I was in the UAE. So like, what is your spiritual practice? What are you going to use to kind of tap in? Are you going to just be meditating? Are you using crystals? So really want to just kind of walk you through like this like holistic experience to see how can you be better equipped and prepared. And did I say everything? Oh, wait, let me see. I have my list here. I want to make sure I didn't miss out. Thank you for asking me that question, by the way. Yeah, and then of course, like everyday life, what relates to health, and then hobbies. Like for example, I used to like playing squash when I was in the UAE. I have yet to play squash here, but badminton is very popular in China. Like what are those things you're gonna do with your time so you're not just like eating your life away or drinking your life away, or, you know, it's just trying to give you like a framework so you can start thinking about those things, because it's just helpful. And then of course, most importantly, of course, creating community. You know, all of you, I'll probably check into Sheeta's lives. This is a great way to connect with people. Clubhouse is another great way, Facebook groups. But I also say that within those groups, it's very important to like find someone that resonates with you and then try to message them. Because just like Sheeta said in the beginning, like if you met someone, let's say, that did not like China and you were, let's say, interested in going to China, it might turn you off and you might turn down an experience that you'd probably be open to. But because someone, and rightfully so, everyone is right and entitled to an opinion, so that's not what I'm saying. But let's say someone's leaving a place and they're like done with it. That's not the person you want to talk to when you're looking to go there. You know what I mean? So just always wanting to know how do I create community? I'm very big. I tell everyone this. I think that you should have several communities. Like for me, like my ideal community is having a Jamaican community, but I already told you about how I feel about the one in China. It's okay. Having a Black girl community, that's important to me. Because I'm into spirituality and stuff, I have like a whole, you know, we talk crystals and we talk manifestation, right? I have entrepreneurial community because I have a coach. I've done coaching events here in Shanghai. So I think, and those are like minor communities. So it's really important to think about like, what are all these communities that's really important to me that I need to be a part of? And then how do you create that? Because as I said on my IG story today, you're going to find people that are going to be like your besties for life. There's going to be people that you're probably just going to go and have drinks with. And then there's also going to just be people that you're just like, you know, pleasantries, like you go out and you shoot the breeze and and like, how do you do that and be at peace with that, right? Because some, you know, depending on how you are, for some people that's like okay, and then for some people it's not, like it's uncomfortable. So I pretty much just take you on a journey through those things, just so that you feel more confident in terms of like going out there and becoming an expat. And then of course, allowing you to have like this, where you can ask me questions as you get ready for your journey.
Okay. And there'll be more information on your program coming up this week.
Correct. Yes. This week. Yes. Okay. Yes. So you can
on
check
IG.
Out on my Instagram. Yes, on IG. Yes.
Okay. So there's actually a question for you, a coaching question already in the comments. All right. So Elle Davis is having a hard time deciding where she wants to go. She has a couple preferences, but she can't choose. So she wants to suggest a way to choose. So we're not choosing for her, but suggesting maybe some things to think about as she chooses. And Mina was kind enough to ask what's on her list. And on her list is Mexico, Paris, Colombian coastal cities, and North African countries. So
wow.
Right?
That's a lot.
Great list.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, I like it.
What would you start thinking about if you were narrowing down those options?
I mean, for me, I'm always thinking of lists of like what's most important to me. I mean, first I would list the countries specifically, because you said North Africa, so that's like a bunch of countries. Right. So I would really get clear on what's most important to me. I would think of my urgency, like how quickly do I need these things? With COVID, what is most feasible? Like what I don't know where her passport, where she's from. So like, what's the cost? I like to be frugal. So like to me, if something's going to cost me the least amount and least amount of pain, and especially during this time, that would probably be my most. Also depends also, like if I know somebody in any of those places, like going back to community, like if it's a place I know where I know people for sure, that could help me and support me. So I'm not just jumping in, then that would be something that I would also use as a guide. But I was also thinking of my motivation because those are so distinct. I would be curious as to why, because it's not like you're just like South America and you're like saying, okay, I'm going to Bolivia, Chile, whatever. Like you are literally like South America, Africa, Mexico,
Europe,
like
there's Paris, there's there,
Europe, like
yes.
yeah, like I would be curious as to, is it because you like these places or is it something that you're trying to achieve? So that would definitely, you would definitely need like a real honest, uh, get real honest with yourself about what is it that you really want right now, and what you'd be okay with having later.
That's actually a good point because a lot of us think about when we move abroad, like I am going here. And it's like, yeah, you might be going there. You might be there for a year, maybe two, maybe 6 months, but are you going somewhere else next or is this it for you? And so it doesn't have to
Right.
be it. Your first move abroad wasn't your only move abroad. You can also go to other places too. So yeah. So
Yeah.
maybe those 5 places we named, maybe it's all of those, but for 2 years apiece or 3 years or one. Or maybe you go to one and after a month you're like, this ain't it. I think we have to
Yeah.
be open to that too. I know some
You have to
people
be
move
open.
with the idea that like I have to make this place I have to pick the perfect place because I'm moving and that's it, right? I'm leaving the US, I'm moving here,
Right.
this is my new home. And it's like it doesn't have to be perfect. You could move. And
Yeah.
if you don't
I
like
mean,
it, go somewhere else.
even just like I shared with you, like because I have friends in Portugal and now I have you and I watch you and Adelia and now I'm like, I feel the same. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, do I want to go to Portugal or do I want to go to Mexico? So then I said to myself, all right, how about I just do a month in each place? Like, problem solved. Like, right now I know I can go to Mexico, right? Right now Portugal is not really just taking anyone, so that's not really
Right.
realistic. So I think sometimes you have to be like the conversation of ease, just allow yourself some ease, know that everything isn't like urgent unless you're dying. And of course you want to create the situation that has the most like ease in the situation too. So like if you know someone there, that would make me jump on an opportunity first, right? Because now I have something that is a little comfort, a little cushion. I mean, I don't know what your finances are too. So if the place is more affordable, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know who RM is too. Yeah, Mexico and Portugal. Sheeta's doing a real great job with that Mexico City, man. Because I did not even see that on my I watched Sheeta because I just want to know how do people take sabbaticals. I wasn't thinking about where she lived. And then she started talking about all of this Mexico and eating tacos and doing all these things. And now I'm like, hmm. And
So
now when I tell people Mexico, they look at me like, really, Nicole? I'm like, you don't understand. You need to watch this lady.
and I know a lot of people come to Mexico because for a lot of us it's easy. If you're American, Mexico is probably one of the easiest places to get to. Um, but that's not enough, right?
Yeah,
Nicole knows
yeah,
that.
yeah,
As an expat, easy isn't enough. If it's not the
yeah,
place for you, it's not the place for
yeah,
you. And
yeah.
you're going to be in a place that's not the place for you every
Right.
single day. So you need to make sure that when
Yeah.
your first place doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to be willing to acknowledge that and not just stick it
Yeah.
out because you're here and find the
Right.
place that's right for you.
100%.
So
I like
um,
also what Lori said too. I saw Lori. Yeah, that's so important about health because I think I even asked. I don't know if I asked Sheeta or asked someone else about like freezing eggs. Someone was doing a live, and I was asking questions like that because even I think stuff like that is so important. Even as an expat, like what's your health insurance going to be for your country, and if you didn't have the health coverage with your job, can I afford to do this surgery? Like as you said, pap smears or things like that. Like those are like the real deal. So that is why I created the program because I find that sometimes we just look at the shiny part of like becoming an expat or a digital nomad. Like you just want to like get and live in a cool place. And then you don't want to wait till you arrive there. And now you're like frazzled because you didn't think about a bunch of other things. And I get it. Like, I think you should be excited for sure. But then there are all these other things that can turn it into like a living hell. And you don't want that. You definitely don't want that at all. So yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. So if you guys have not signed up for Exodus Homecoming, this is my time to plug. Exodus Homecoming is happening September 24th through 26th. It is a 3-day event. We are going to have women, I said woman, but it's really women, plural, who attended Exodus Summit last year in September, and since then have moved abroad or taken career breaks in the last 12 months. It's really like 11 months, 10 months now, but they have done it. They have made it happen. They're going to tell you how they took those steps. They're going to tell you how they went from thinking about it to making it happen. And they're going to tell you the good and the bad of their life abroad. So if you're here watching and you haven't purchased your ticket to Exodus Summit yet, Exodus Homecoming yet, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? Let's make this happen. Let's make this happen. So today, go buy your ticket at exodushomecoming.com because you're going to want to be in the room. Like, it's important because it's a community building activity, right? Like, you're going to meet women who want to go to the country you're going to, who are in the country you want to go to, and you'll be able to build community, but you'll also be able to hear lots of lessons that are going to be important because one of the things about this expat community is that we love, most of us, right? I'm not gonna say all of us, but we love paying it forward, right? Like, we have gotten advice and guidance because there have been people ahead of us, and we want to help the people who still want to go. So this is going to be a great opportunity to reach out to people who have done it before, who are doing it now. You're gonna be able to build community and really learn from other people's experiences. There will be some mistakes. I love to tell you all about my mistakes. I make them. But this is Exodus Homecoming is my baby. And so come to the baby. It's going to be, what do they call them? A sip and see? It's like a sip and see of my baby. But it's to learn and to grow with like-minded people. And that is honestly, I think, one of the hardest parts about this journey is finding like-minded people. So Black women who want the same thing you want, there are going to be hundreds of them. Hundreds of Black women who want the same thing you want. So come, meet them, make friends. You're gonna need them. So Coach Tish was here last week, and she said, freedom requires friends. And that, I think, is a big truth. Like, it is important that you build a community, like you were talking about. Build a community who will help you get to where you want to go. So come through. Exodus Homecoming. All right.
It's so good.
Nicole.
Yeah.
I want to get to a couple of specific questions.
Sure.
Like I said, we've answered a lot, but there's some that I didn't think to ask. So here we go. Do you cut your own hair or a barber?
My ex-bae.
What? Your ex cuts your hair. You're in China.
Yeah, he's amazing like that. He cuts my hair. But no, I used to go to a barber, but then, he just cuts it for me.
And he still cuts it. And you're not worried about him messing it up?
I'm not worried about him messing up.
Okay.
I attract amazing men, and I normalize cutting off ties, and it still be peace and love.
Okay, good. So peace and love and haircuts. I love it.
Yes, peace and love and haircuts.
All right. What was the apartment hunting process like?
So for my school, it actually came with a apartment. So you just had the choice of whether or not you wanted to live right across the street or a little bit downtown-ish. It wasn't downtown because I live downtown now. So I chose the latter. And then this place that I'm living in till I leave, that was fairly easy because there's a bunch of realtors. So I just, there's a lot of groups on WeChat. So WeChat is like, I don't even know how to describe it because it's not like WhatsApp, but it's WhatsApp in a sense. But like, there's all these subgroups. It's it's like active. Yeah. It's like on 1,000. It's like the 1,000th power. Yeah. you pose a question in one group and then somebody like, let me add you to this group. And then next thing you know, you're in a whole group of like 1,500 realtors. So I just use a realtor that my friend
Okay.
used. And, you know, you just message a couple of them. You tell them the price point. Of course, you know, some of them will try to like put the rates up really high or whatnot. Even though during COVID, because there were so many people that were outside of China, people just wanted to fill their apartments. So some people were able to take advantage of that and pay like cheaper rent than normal, especially if you're downtown. But yeah, generally, yeah, same thing where you put a deposit down, you come, you get the keys, and then you move in. That was fairly easy though.
I actually, this isn't one of the questions, but I have no idea so you're in Shanghai, major
Yes,
city.
yes.
What is rent like? So are you in a one bedroom?
So right now, so let me tell you about. Okay, I've been saying manifestation a lot,
All
but I'm
right.
gonna tell you what I manifested. My rent is 8,000 kwai, which is the equivalent of like a little bit over $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
And I live like downtown. Like I live right by Jinghan Temple. If anyone's gone to Shanghai, or if you look it up, it is like a place. It's a temple. Everybody knows Jinghan Temple. I'm like literally in the city. Like I'm the equivalent of like where 34th Street would be. Like if you were in New York City,
Okay.
again, like in that area. And I
Mm-hmm.
pay $1,000. That is not normal, considering that I have a 2-bedroom apartment. I mean,
Okay.
even when I left New York, I was paying 1,200 for my 1 bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
So you go figure. So, but I was very adamant about wanting to pay a certain price, and I wanted to be in a certain location, and so said, so done. Whereas
Okay.
my friend lives around the corner, and he pays 12,000 kwai, which is a little bit like 12, 1,500, almost 2,000 US,
Okay.
and he
All
has a
right.
1 bedroom. So that's generally
Okay.
the price.
So rent
Yeah.
isn't cheap in Shanghai
No, it's
comparatively to
just,
other
yeah,
places. Yeah.
yeah. Shanghai is the most expensive city of China. So like
Okay.
in China, excuse me, not of China, and that's why most people when they leave other provinces, it's so hard to kind of deal with the transition because everything is like. But for me, because I was coming from the UAE, where the UAE is so expensive, in my mind, it doesn't feel that bad here. But that's because I'm comparing it to being in the UAE, you know.
Okay.
Um. So yeah.
Okay. Um, oh, Lauren, I love this. I noticed that people who are expats are more at peace with themselves in life in general. Plus, their skin is always glowing. I guess that's due to less stress. I'm definitely less stressed outside of the US, but I'm not always at peace. Like, I think that's something that we touched on earlier. Like, it looks peaceful from the outside. Sometimes it's not. But I will say that I'm definitely less stressed.
It's funny because okay, so I would say that because of like where I am in my journey of just like life, I definitely feel way more content.
Hmm.
I definitely have a lot of patience. Um, things don't, you know, yeah, I guess you would say peace. I guess you would say that. Like, I just feel like it doesn't even make sense to like go crazy about things because it doesn't help. It doesn't help me to get all riled up if there's like I can't do anything about it, especially when it has to do with like the country per se. Um, so I would kind of agree with that in terms of peace with self, but that could be like myself and my introspection. That could be me and
Hmm.
like where I am in my growth. I don't think life is easier, but I think because I've intentionally worked on myself,
Yeah.
I do I do recognize that when I'm around other people that there are things that they might find more flustered or bothered by,
Hmm.
but it could just be that I've taken that extra leap of like, okay, this is what I could do. Because there is stress, especially now. Like my brother just had a baby and I wasn't there, or missing cousins' weddings,
Hmm.
or worrying about your own life and where it's gonna, like there is other kinds of stress that because even just taking this opportunity to move abroad, like you still trade off other things. So sometimes that can come up as stress or worry. Especially as I said, like I just left an event and there were women who were just like, they're so happy about what I'm doing, and because they're like, wait, I have to stay here because I need money, but like it'll be 3 years and I haven't seen my family, like, and like trying to think about like what's most important, and that's stress, I would say, like
Yeah.
choosing between finances and and your family, or like knowing that if you leave here, you probably won't be let back in because, you know, I don't think China, they said China may not be open till 2023, 2024. Who knows?
Okay.
So I would say, I think it's a different kind of stress, but I mean, and I think there's also a such thing. I think there's also a thing as like good stress too.
Yeah.
Like planning a new life, it could be good stress. Like taking a, you know, sabbatical could be good stress because you're, you know, you're making changes in your life. So, I think that sometimes the stress could also be really good.
Yeah. I will also say that I think there are probably expats who are, I know there are expats who are not glowing and who are not at peace with themselves, but you don't see them. They're not as visible. You know what I mean? Like they don't, they're typically more, I would say, inward looking, or maybe that's not right. In my travels, I met a lot of people who are really unhappy where they are, but they kind of keep that to themselves in their small circles because they want people to think that everything is great, right? Like there's a lot of like pretending that everything is fine, even though they're unhappy where they are and they're not choosing to move. A lot of times because of money. A lot of times it's because this place I'm living is really, I don't like being here, but it's really cheap. So I'm going to stay and I'm going to talk crap about the whole community I'm in, right? Like I'm going to bitch about where I live every day, but I'm here because it's cheap, is something you will find as you dig more into communities and as you meet people in person. But
see, and that's where I come in. I like to do that
business.
extra digging. I like to do the extra digging. I mean, only if someone wants to do that extra digging. I mean, that's how I set myself apart from in terms of the expat world coaching. Is I want to. I mean, I only want people that want to do that kind of digging. Like I don't want to force anybody to dig. But I think that level of introspection, it might be messy at first, but it definitely helps you to get clear or have a little bit more clarity. Because I think that ease and peace comes when you have clarity.
Right.
Because when you make decisions now, you're making it from a very empowered space rather than a helpless space or a, you know, like this lack space. Because I just think there's a lot of possibilities in a lot of places. But if you just think that you only have these limitations, then you will carry that with everything that you do.
Right. Right. Okay. Another question that I got in on IG is, what are some preconceived notions that you had about China that were debunked by friends or experiences with Chinese?
Oh, that's an excellent question.
Right? Had to ask.
That was a really good question. What? You know what? It's funny. The only thing that I could think of right now was the whole idea of them being like good with money. Like, you know, like I know in the States you talk about how they buy a lot of things. I think what I can say, I don't know if I had these perceived notions, but one of them is just a money thing. But I think the difference I have now, as I've been taking time to kind of understand like their history, and like why I think like sometimes when you know the why someone does something, it doesn't make it okay, but you have like the sense of compassion. And like even just like, thinking that like Asian community is like super smart, like especially if you're in the US, like they invest in their children from like the moment the child is like coming out the womb. So they're already, so it's not like for me as a teacher, it's not always necessarily this child is so super smart. It's because they've had support outside of school from like they were 3 years old. So so when you meet them and you think that they're like, you know, all of this, like they're special, like their brain does something that, let's say this, you know, Tyrone can't do. It's like, no, he's been actively supported since he came out the womb. So I think just like, I've had these ideologies about money and like education, but I think because it's so competitive here, so for them to stand out and be able to get into school overseas, which would be like America, Canada, and all of that, they have to set this child up to win from like once they come out the womb. So they have a lot of pressure. So even though I find them sometimes like you have to say like the whole being aggressive or what have you, it's because of all the things that they have against, like, I don't want to say against it, but the things they have to fight through to make it ahead. So I feel like I have that understanding piece. And then also because of like the prior one child policy, of course, if you have one child, you can definitely pour into them versus if you have four, right? Like right now they actually want them to have 3 children now because they're realizing that the majority, like they have a larger older community than they have a young community. So they really try to balance out the population. So that's the reason why there's a lot of shifts now with like training centers and things like that here, because they don't want the excuse to be that the parents are having to invest in all of these programs. So now they wanted to minimize that. So I think for me, it's been more so the understanding why they do the things they do. So like, even though it's like showing me true, like how they are with money, like, and all of these, but now I understand why. So I think now I just have like this, I don't look at them like, oh my God, they're so super special and smart. I'm like, oh no, you've been like supported and you're like in 10 after school programs since the moment you came out the womb. So that's why.
Right.
That's number one. And then number two, because I know it's not easy, it's not really an easy thing for them to get out to the US. Like there's a test they take called Go-Cal, which they have to essentially decide if they're going to take this test. And that's a test you take to go to like a Chinese college. But you have to kind of know if you're going to do that like by 3rd or 4th grade, or you're going to go the route of the international route, right? So they're kind of like forced to have to think about things immediately, which then adds to the aggression, which then adds to like needing money. Like I had an 8th grader, my 8th grade student was like, oh, Miss Stroud, like, I'm not having kids, it's too much money. Like, I don't know if my kids back home would have this knowledge base of like having a kids and like cost. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I think like for that part, I feel like that has been like my most awareness, I think, of like being here. And it's given me like a lot of compassion. I think that's an important thing to have. I don't feel sorry for people, but like have compassion and like understanding of cultures. And now I'm like, oh, I get it now. And I think like as an American, I don't necessarily have to worry about something like that because I can just go to university anywhere, or, you know, yeah, we might complain about student loans, but we're not like, it's like a different dynamic of I guess, struggle or competition, if you will. So I think that's been my greatest aha, or just kind of understanding.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to thank you for being here. I also recognize that it's Monday morning for you. So
yes, it's 12:08. Yes.
Yes, we should probably wrap this up because you said you have camp.
Yes.
Okay.
It's easy.
All right.
Yeah, it's easy peasy.
All right. So we are going to wrap this up. Thank you to everyone who showed up here. We appreciate you. Bye. Make sure you are following Nicole on IG. Make sure you're following me on IG.
The Soulful Expat.
The Soulful Expat. And she's going to announce her coaching program this week.
Yes.
Do we know what day?
It should be up by Friday.
By Friday
the link,
this week.
The link will be under my bio.
All right.
It should be there. Yes.
J. Phil came in a little bit late, but the Jamaicans stay representing. All right. And we will talk to you guys later. Thanks everyone for showing up. Bye.
Thank you.